Welcome back to Ready Player None, the only podcast where you have to make a perception check before you can listen. What's your wisdom modifier? Ooh, yikes. Well, see you next time. We start Chapter 8 as Wade heads into the Tomb of Horrors, a definitely not public domain dungeon. So Wade heads through the tomb, following the directions in the D&D module of the same name, and so far avoiding any monsters and traps. My surroundings made me feel like I was in a low-budget sword and sorcery flick like Hawk the Slayer or the Beastmaster. Just describe something without using a movie. I beg of you. Wade finds himself in the chamber called the Chapel of Evil, where he finds thousands of gold and silver coins. He scoops some up and it adds to his wallet, though if I remember correctly, it's touching the treasure that triggers the demi-lich to come after you. So surely this is going to come back and bite him in the butt. He also manages to loot several magical items along the way. A +1 flaming sword, a gem of seeing, a +1 ring of protection. I even found a suit of +3 full plate armor. Its gleaming chrome appearance reminded me of the badass armor worn by the knights in Excalibur. Just describe something without using another reference. Wade gradually becomes more powerful and confident as he goes throughout the dungeon, through what some may call cheating. But the reality differs from the module when he hits the Pillared Throne Room. The King Acererak, the Demi-Lich, is sat in his throne, where according to the module he should be deeper within a crypt. If Halliday had placed the Lich in this room, perhaps he'd placed the Copper Key here too. I had to find out. But as Wade approaches, the Lich looks up at him, but doesn't get up to fight. Instead, he lowered his head and fixed me with his chilling gaze. "Greetings, Parzival," he said in a rasping voice. "What is it that you seek?" Wade tells him that he seeks the Copper Key, and Acererak admits that he's come to the right place. But when the Dead King asks how he knows Wade can be worthy of having the Copper Key, Wade's best answer is, "Allow me to prove my worth, noble Acererak." Acererak suggests a joust. Wade says they'll be needing horses, but Acererak says not horses, birds. He waved a skeletal hand at his throne. There was a brief flash of light, accompanied by a transformation sound effect, which I was pretty sure had been lifted from the old Super Friends cartoon. The throne melted and morphed into an old coin-operated video game cabinet. 2 joysticks protruded from its control panel, 1 yellow and 1 blue. I couldn't help but grin as I read the name on the game's backlit marquee, Joust. Williams Electronics 1982. Yep, you stole a Demi-Lich King from D&D in order to have him challenge your main protagonist in an arcade game of Joust. In a best of 2 out of 3 game contest, Acererak promises Wade the Copper Key if he wins, but if Wade loses, then you shall die. A ball of swirling orange flame appeared in his right hand. He raised it threateningly. The fireball in Acererak's hand vanished. He stretched out his leathery palm, which now held 2 shiny quarters. "The games are on me," he said. See, on some level, I could probably appreciate a bony old skeleton with rubies for eyes playing an arcade cabinet, but in this it's just completely charmless. I won't waste your time like Ernest Cline does by describing what happens in a game of Joust, but I will just note that here, even though Wade hasn't played Joust in over a year, he just so happens to have the exact skills from a few months of playing it every day non-stop with H. Isn't it so very convenient that he has the exact skill for this eventuality? After Acererak wins the first game, Wade asks if they can switch sides so Wade can be player 1, just like when he used to play against H. And it's this muscle memory that allows him to win the second game. Probably. I haven't actually read the next few paragraphs yet, but I'm assuming that I'm predicting that it does. This is so dumb. By changing my ostrich's direction at a certain moment, I could get him to slam his stalk into one of the oncoming buzzards. Shut up. Oh yeah, so Wade does win the second game. What a surprise. And then, yeah, they just have a third game of Joust. During the final wave, so many buzzards filled the screen that it was hard to move without getting dusted by one of them. I don't know what I was expecting to actually happen, but this was not it. I got no nostalgia for Joust. I've never seen it played before, and it's just so integral to this plot element. So with a complete lack of tension, Wade wins the third game, and consequently wins the match. After Acererak hits the arcade cabinet and makes it dissipate into its constituent pixels, he transforms into the familiar sight of Halliday's avatar Anorak. With characteristic showmanship, Anorak presents Wade with his award. The chamber filled with the sound of a full orchestra. Triumphant horns were quickly joined by a stirring string section. Good so far, that's fine. You can say that he's got the presentation down well. Subsequent sentence. I recognise the music. It was the last track from John Williams' original Star Wars score, used in the scene where Princess Leia gives Luke and Han their medals, and Chewbacca, as you may recall, gets the shaft. Shut up. Get an original bone in your body. Anorak gives him the copper key, and in receiving it, Wade gains 50,000 experience points, enough to raise my avatar all the way up to 10th level. Anorak bids him good luck and disappears. His avatar vanished in a flash of light, accompanied by a teleportation sound effect I knew was lifted from the old 80s Dungeons & Dragons cartoon. Imagine being a writer and have the ability to put out all your original ideas into the world, but then saying, oh, this part sounded like an old cartoon though, actually. Wade inspects the key and spots 2 small lines of text engraved into the metal. What you seek lies hidden in the trash on the deepest level of Dagorath. This allows Wade to deduce the location of the first gate. The trash part refers to computers made by Tandy and Radio Shack in the 70s and 80s. The TRS-80, aka the Trash 80, because it sucks. TRS-80 happens to be Halliday's first computer, and you can find one in the Oasis in a recreation of Halliday's childhood town, on a planet named Middletown. This old man passed his prime as slaved over his medium of choice in order to recapture the magic of his lost childhood. And I'll leave it ambiguous as to whether I'm talking about Halliday or Ernest Cline. The Dagorath part refers to an obscure computer game called Dungeons of Dagorath, released in 1982 for the TRS-80 color computer. The fact that there are 2 G's in the middle of Dagorath differentiates it from Dagorath, the elvish word in The Lord of the Rings. So all I had to do was teleport to Middletown, go to Halliday's house, sit down at his TRS-80, play the game, reach the bottom level of the dungeon, and that was where I'd find the first gate. I checked the time, 11:03 PM, OST, Oasis Server Time, which also happened to be Eastern Standard Time, because America is the centre of the universe, and presumably countries on the other side of the world have to go to school in the middle of the night. So using the money, using the gold and treasure that Wade has plundered from the tomb, he intends to teleport to Middletown for the next leg of his quest. Even though he's been logged into the Oasis for 15 hours now, and he could wait until the weekend, he's too excited to sleep and he wants to go now. But as he makes for the exit, the silhouette of an avatar appeared in the doorway. I was about to reach for my sword when I realized I was still holding the copper key in my hand. I shoved it into a pouch on my belt and fumbled my sword out of its scabbard. As I raised my blade, the avatar spoke. End chapter 8. So that was something else. Again, I like the visual idea of a skeleton and a knight in armor playing an arcade cabinet. It's surreal, but I feel like this book hasn't done enough to earn its surreality. Probably because its idea of surreality is just combining disparate bits of popular culture into very much a derivative work. And I'm beginning to notice that if the nostalgia isn't aimed at you, you're going to get nothing out of this experience. Because the story isn't there. And why else would you possibly be reading it? Ah well. I've been Gherkin. You can find me on Twitter at The Last Gherkin, Tumblr, The Last Gherkin, YouTube, The Last Gherkin, where you can watch this as a video with subtitles, and at thelastgherkin.podbean.com for an MP3 download. In the comments below, tell me what your favourite arcade game to play with a skeleton would be. Till next time, may all your crits be hits. Till next time, may all your Ds be 20s. No, I can't use that. Ba-da-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba